Hello, guys, welcome back to my channel When Humanities is Life. So, this is the last part of this chapter. We have finally done it, and in this video, we will be talking mostly about domestic violence. Now, what do you mean by domestic violence? Well, we all know that domestic violence refers to those acts of cruelty against women. Okay, now the nature of violence against women, it varies based on socio-cultural, political, and economic context. These three contexts and also spaces where it occurs. It can occur in public spaces, in front of people, and also in private spaces of matrimonial relationship. A woman can be raped even after marriage. She can be tortured. Most of us know instances of such things from newspapers, from even events in our daily life, from our domestic help. They report such domestic violence issues which are often ignored. Now, domestic violence is largely, um, what is it called, forbidden. Yes, it's forbidden in western countries, and in most developing countries it's either legally recognized, like in India, where issues of domestic violence are often reported. They are legally recognized, where penalties are provided for such acts. And in other countries, like in Middle East and West Asia, such domestic violence issues are even socially acceptable. Okay, for example, the United Arab Emirate laws, it allows men to use limited physical means to discipline his wife and children. Just imagine, they can beat their wives and children to discipline them. Obviously, such things are not in consonance with our understanding of equality, but nevertheless, these things happen. It's even the law of these countries, of these Arabian countries. And in some countries like Jordan, Guinea, Zambia, Sierra Leone. Oh, there is going to be one N. Sorry for the spelling mistake. Then Laos and Ethiopia. The man can, you know, resort to physical means to discipline their children and their wife. Now, what does the international laws say about domestic violence? Well, internationally, especially within the United Nations, domestic violence is recognized as a form of violence, as a specific area of discrimination against women. So, if we are talking about the international legal framework, then the first thing that comes to our mind is the CEDAW, CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. This is a kind of a mnemonic that you can use. It's also given in your textbook, if I'm not wrong. Okay, this convention was passed in 1979, and it defines violence against women as any gender based violence act that results in physical, sexual, and psychological harm or suffering to women, and it includes threats of such action, coercion, and arbitrary deprivation of liberty. Okay, I hope you understood. Then, violence against women can also occur in private life and in public. In the private life, especially within the matrimonial home, it can occur in the form of battering, sexual abuse of female children in the household. Often, female children in the house, they're raped by members. It happens. There are many stories about it, and stories are representations of what actually happens in the society. Then dowry related violence, when a woman uh, or her family cannot arrange for the money in the during the marriage, which in the first place is illegal to take. Such women are extremely tortured in the matrimonial house. Then marital rape, you all mostly think that rape can happen in the public place against other women, but in fact, even after marriage, a woman can be raped if the husband engages in the sexual intercourse without her permission. So such marital rapes account to domestic violence or genital mutilation. It's harmful to the woman. Then non-spousal violence too. Violence related to exploitation. Women are often exploited in various ways. And in public life, we have rape, abuse, harassment, intimidation in the workplace and educational institutes, harm to women, trafficking, which relates to kidnapping and all. The United Nations also has legislated on several laws on matters relating to discrimination against women. For example, in 1996, the UN Commission on Human Rights, which I think is known as UNHRC, United Nations Human Rights Council, it created the UN model legislation on domestic violence with the aim of serving as a guide for comprehensive legislation on domestic violence at state level. So it helps in drafting various laws. It helps nation in drafting these laws. India also has taken the help of this particular legislation in drafting its domestic violence laws, and it defines uh, domestic violence as all acts of gender based physical, psychological, and sexual abuse by a family member against women in the family. And a number of examples of such domestic violence uh, are given. For example, simple assault, arson, kidnapping, sexual violence, marital rape, coercion, intimidation, threats, humiliating verbal abuse, and a number of other things like stalking, dowry or bride price related violence, destruction of property. Other many others are given, but you need not remember everything. Just learn these things because you are not a machine. We understand. So yes, all these things are the examples of domestic violence. Up till now, we were discussing about the laws on domestic violence in the international level. Now we come to India. Laws in India on domestic violence. So, the most important of such legislation was passed in 2005 by the Indian Parliament, which is called the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. This is the PWDVA. You will read about it more in your future classes. Now, this addresses violence occurring in the private sphere. Before 2005, there were no laws which deals with cruelty or uh, other things against women. These were largely treated as criminal things, but there was no comprehensive law that gave civil remedies to women or gave monetary reliefs or money repayment and compensation to the aggrieved woman. So the PWDVA acts as a new law to serve all these purposes of providing civil remedies to women. And the most important law, mind you, the most important legislation or case actually on domestic violence against women in India relates to this. The This case is the Vishakha and others versus State of Rajasthan and others. It's a landmark judgment given by the Supreme Court regarding the sexual harassment of women in the workplace, not in the domestic sphere. It's a part of it, but especially in the workplace. Now, many women rights groups and NGOs, they filed this particular case in the Supreme Court in the interest of the women's rights as a PIL. You must know what a PIL means. It's public interest litigation. In Hindi, it's called Janhit Yachika. Okay, or social action litigation, the SAL. The origin of the case goes back to 1992. Now we're going to study an event. Okay, now this is Bhanwari Devi. Bhanwari Devi was a low caste woman in her 50s. Let me tell you what happened to her. She was a social worker. She worked at the grassroots levels with the Rajasthan government's women development project, and she was gang raped. She was gang raped by a number of upper caste men. Why? Because she wanted to protest against child marriage. She wanted to stop a child marriage, and as a result, she was gang raped by a number of Gujjar men. What happened? The trial court, it rejected her plea, and the accused offenders, the men, were acquitted. The court stated that the upper caste men could not have raped a low caste woman. Why? Moreover, because the village authorities, the doctors, and the police, all these three institutions have rejected her accusation. Perhaps the men had used influence, and as a result, the accused were acquitted, and Bhanwari Devi didn't get her justice. So the NGOs and the women rights groups, the NGO means non-governmental organization. You must have heard about these. And Bhanwari Devi's case was brought before the Supreme Court. What happened here? In the absence of any Indian law dealing specifically with domestic violence in the workplace, what happened? The Supreme Court referred to the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We know, as I discussed right now, that no specific laws before the PWDVA of 2006 was there that dealt with the discrimination against women and providing civil remedies to her. So, what happened in the absence of any such laws back in in the late 1990s? The Supreme Court used or referred to the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and it delivered a set of standards which was known as the Vishakha Guidelines. Now, the legal students throughout your career, you will meet this guidelines again and again whenever women's right is concerned. So, the Vishakha Guidelines, it consisted of four broad points. What are they? First of all, it's the onus or the responsibility of the employer to ensure that the company code of conduct has rules preventing sexual harassment in the workplace. Secondly, organizations must establish complaint committees which are headed by women to investigate into such issues of violence against women and harassment. The company should also initiate disciplinary action against offenders and provide safeguard to the interest of the victims. And the last point states that the female employees must be made aware of their rights. Now, this law, the PWDVA, as we discussed, the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. Now, India is party to both the CEDAW, the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women of 1979, and the UN Declaration of Elimination of Violence Against Women, which was passed in 1993. With respect to these legislations, what happened? PWDVA confirmed to all these laws, and it defined domestic violence as any act, omission, commission, or conduct of the respondent which is against women, and it will amount to domestic violence. Now, there are a number of points under PWDVA. First thing to remember is that Section 3 of PWDVA, it defines domestic violence as what I said, any act, omission, commission, or conduct against women. Then the subpoints, we have a number of subpoints. First of all, it harms, injures, or endangers the health of the woman, and it includes verbal abuse, physical or economical, emotional, and sexual abuse too, in the category of domestic violence, and it harasses or harms the aggrieved person with a view to coerce her. It also can be related to any unlawful demand for dowry or other valuables from the woman. It threatens the aggrieved person or any person related to her by any conduct, and it also injures and causes harm to the aggrieved person. Now, the PWDVA also assures the woman of some essential support services to deal with domestic violence. First of all, mandatory assistance by medical facilities and sheltered homes, just for emergency backup. Then, provisions for legal aid. The woman is also entitled to some aid from the state if she doesn't have the means, and counseling on the direction of the court. The women often, in such instances of harassment, are mentally shattered. Also, for psychological strength, counseling or interfering by trained psychologists to help the woman get out of the situation is also ensured by the Indian government. And protection officers or service providers are to maintain a list and facilitate access. So, certain special guards and officers are sent by the court to help the woman from any harassment against the wrongdoers, perhaps. And lastly, we come to the salient features of PWDVA. Don't worry, I know there are many points, there are 8 points, which are often unrelated, but I have highlighted the uh, keywords. Now, you must be wondering why I didn't make a precise note of this. I have enlisted all the details of it because, your term to exam is going to be a subjective exam. I hope you know that. And you have to write everything in details. So, NCRT, the language of NCRT has to be written. Just read it and do it up till an extent that you can do. First of all, it's a civil law and it's victim driven. It helps to it helps a woman to directly access the court. All such incidental delays, incidental expenses are reduced so that the woman can directly initiate the process and can directly appear before the court. And the process, first of all, can be initiated only with the consent of the woman. In contrary to criminal law, which focuses on prosecuting the criminals, this Act, PWDVA, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, it is absolutely woman centric. Second point is that it describes domestic relationship and it also includes not only wives but also mothers, sisters, daughters, and female live-in partners. Third point is that protection under this act is not only limited to matrimonial home but shared householders, that of the mother, sisters, and daughters are also included under the provisions of protection under the act. And it provides stop violence orders. What does it mean? It's it refers to the emergency reliefs to stop violence immediately, to enforce other laws, divorce laws, for instance. So the wrongdoers have to immediately stop violence, and that's the order. It's an injunction, basically. And for its effective implementation, it also provides some protection officers to act as the nexus between the woman and the court. They're basically the ones who provide service, often like guards. Okay, they're crucial as the women often feel uncomfortable to approach the court, and many NGOs, which are often very close to the general public, they register as these service providers, and the women are much more comfortable with these NGOs than to approach the court directly. Then we come to the next point. It stipulates for the single window clearance system to aid women in accessing the justice system. It allows her to enforce other criminal reliefs under other laws, like she can enforce the right not to be dispossessed when a divorce petition is pending under section 498A of Indian Penal Code of 1860, and it helps her avoid filing multiple suits in various forms. It's a single window clearance system. In one go, she can solve many issues pending before the court, like divorce and all. Then we come to the next point. The PWDVA states that the magistrate at any stage of the proceeding can direct either or both of the parties to undertake counseling. Counseling is help from trained psychologists or the ones who are supposed to therapists. They can help in resolving issues by helping parties to reach mutually amicable solution. They're also like a support system to the woman and to both the parties, of the both the spouses. Now, women groups are critical about counseling since counseling often ends up being anti-woman. It undermines a woman's right to dignity and send her back to the violent situation of her matrimonial home just to preserve the institution of family. So many are not really approving of this counseling issue. And last point is that the PWDA puts responsibility on the state and the central government for training and sensitization of the general public as well as the state authorities, including the judiciary, to help women. The law wants the general public to be sensitive to the needs of women and the state authorities and judiciary to understand the unequal power relationship that exists still now in the society between men and women, just to prevent any further coercion of women. Okay, so thank you so much for bearing with me. And just to let you know, in my channel you can also find videos of psychology, political science, history. Please let me know if you need anything in the comment section. I would be very happy to do a video on whatever you need. And for the next chapter, I will upload video very soon. Thank you so much once again. Bye.